Hey, what's up everybody, it's Dream, and today I'm doing a showcase of how I optimized my teams so that I can kill all 4 of the new battle-tested NPCs in 2 turns. And we are starting in Clearbrook with the Reflective Grandma, the NPC for battle-tested staff. She is weak to wind, wind, and wind as far as I know, because that's all we're using in this comp. This is definitely the easiest one to do, provided you have the units. It's pretty straightforward. We're doing the classic Viola Lynette in the same line, and then just putting 3 wind attackers in front of 3 4-stars that give either offensive or defensive nerfs to the enemy. This composition also works out naturally that I don't have to augment any of their speeds to change the order. My lowest attacker for wind, Scarecrow, is my fastest, so it works out perfectly that Odette and Tikilin go right after him, so that they get to enjoy having their higher damage boosted for the break. I think that some changes can be made to this comp and it's still possible. I don't think Scarecrow is super necessary. I think that he can be easily replaced by a Noelle and then adding a 3-hit ally to the first turn. And given you have a buff Tikilin and Odette, you should still be able to make it work. And of course, shout out to Laura for the magic defense break, Eunice for the magic attack buff, and Menno for the wind resistance break on the enemy. Next, over in Shepherd's Rock, we have the BT Sword NPC, Former Warrior. Now, this is the composition that gave me the most trouble when I was trying to think if 2-turn was possible using my roster. Because merchants aren't exactly the hardest hitting class in the game, it was imperative that I get a Viola off to debuff the enemy. But I also wanted to be able to keep my front line buffed with Lynette's passive and with her actual buff. So that's where the theory crafting finally came in, where if I make my Lynette faster than my Viola, using literally every single piece of speed gear in the game that's available to me, I can get her buffs out on Gilderoy and the entire front line before Gilderoy switches back so that Viola can debuff the boss. But even after all of that, it still required a 3-hit spear NPC just because of the lack of multi-hit spears we currently have in NA. So we come into turn 2 buffed, the boss debuffed, and of course 5 shields still left. And we need our Azlight to be the one to break. So we accomplish this by making Tressa use her priority move to hit the first 3 shields, and then having Azlight hit the last 2 shields and then get a free break hit with her Icicle Rain. And then of course the reason we want Azlight to be our breaker is because it gives an extra ice res down for our Sophia right before she goes, and she blasts that nuke straight into the boss, doing the majority of the damage, and then Gilderoy coming in for the cleanup, the crit making it even nicer. But I'm sure once I get Sacred 4s on both of my merchants, this will be a lot cleaner. And once we get more merchants with multi-hit moves, I can phase out the ally and phase out Viola so that I can eventually get all the shield breaks by myself. But for now, again, shout out to the Lynette Viola being broken, and then Eunice for the magic attack up, and Laura for the magic defense break. Next, we're heading over to the Craigspear Slums for the Powerful Popper. He is our BT Dagger NPC, and this was one until recently that I had to use an ally on for the 2-turn, but recently phased it out. Getting some extra limit breaks and some levels and better weapons onto Siggy and onto Trish made the difference for me, so I gladly went back and refilmed this while I was editing this video so that I could include the improved version. But other than that, I was really happy with how this comp came out. It was the first time I got to use Tahir and his swap passive to gain sword damage. I think that's a really, really cool skill, and then I knew immediately when I saw it I wanted to put it in the composition. And this was also my first time getting to use the boy Barry, sitting behind Siggy to give her extra physical attack, allowing her to be the nail in our coffin at the end of our turn 2 smacks. You can see Fior hitting all shields now, making Wingate in this comp completely useless, but I was too lazy to change him out even after removing the NPC. So he sits there and he looks pretty while all of our waifus finish off the boss for him. And this comp is kind of what I mean when I was saying that I want to replace Viola once I get better merchants for the other BT, because in this one I only have to use Lynette, no Viola, and still very easily smacks all the way through because of how hard our sword waifus hit. And last but not least, we are heading over to Sunshade for our final BT NPC, Sandcat Dancer. She is of course the wielder of our battle-tested fan, and she is honestly the tankiest and the one that I had to work the hardest to gear my units to be able to 2-turn. Because again, just like merchants, our apothecaries are not the hardest hitting units in the game. We are unfortunately using an ally on turn 1 to help get those shields down so that we can do raw damage with our axes on turn 2, along with having to bring our Lynette and our Viola. However, in this comp, our Lynette is not using her buff skill, Our Rydian is attacking both turns. However, she is just there for the swap passive to finish off everyone else's passive buffs in the front row. I tried like 15 different combinations of back row 4-star units as complements to this team, and I found that Laura and Eunice are by far the highest damage upgrades to the party as a whole, because of course it is ice damage that is taking away the majority of our dancer's HP. Another neat little optimization to this fight is getting cheeky and being able to use 1 BP on Theo on turn 1, because he refreshes it himself on turn 2. But even with that, this was the only new BT fight where I had to use both an ally and get Sacred 4s for all of my attackers. Prior to adding both of those Sacred 4 axes, I cannot tell you how many times I would miss a crit and I would leave her with 3k HP left at the end of turn 2. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it taught you something about optimizing if you weren't already on that side of things. Stay cute. Until next time, peace.